Senator Moi with some regional heads of state and now explains why key Kenyatta handlers are jittery about any talks of 2022 politics.
After surviving 2 elections and a double Supreme Court battle challenging his win in a span of only 2 months, while battling an unyielding opposition protesting against his second term,
so help me God,
President Uhuru Kenyatta seemingly acknowledged that the 2017 polls were not his ordinary political roller coaster.
Today's inauguration therefore marks the end, and I repeat, the end of our electoral process.
But in a country where political realignments commence almost immediately after close of the ballot, 5 years to the next election, pundits say Kenyatta's second term will certainly not be without political landmines, blasted by real or imagined 2022 succession politics. And these pictures of Baringo Senator and KANU Chairman Gideon Moi recently receiving visiting African presidents ahead of President Kenyatta's swearing in have not escaped the political grapevine.
Gideon Moi is coming back to national politics, and very strategically and strongly so within the Jubilee setup, either as a coalition to the Jubilee or as a principal person within the Jubilee.
Very sharp.
KANU Secretary General and close confidant of the Moi family, Nick Salat, has dismissed succession politics from Senator Moi's reception of the presidential delegations, including Uganda President Yoweri Museveni, South Sudan's Salva Kiir, and his retired Tanzania counterpart Jakaya Kikwete. Salat terming it normal, despite what some observers argue is the senator's rising political profile.
It's not the first time, actually, that he has received foreign dignitaries and presidents, because I think it depends on the people or the dignitaries themselves who they prefer. And I think in most cases they have wanted him to receive them. And also other senators, I'm told, they do also have that opportunity to receive foreign dignitaries.
But the pictures have rekindled memories of a promise President Kenyatta made to the Jogoo fraternity before the elections, and whose actualization, some analysts say, could rattle a section of the Jubilee camp.
Na mimi niwahakikishie ya kwamba nyinyi kama wana KANU tukishashinda mtakuwa ndani kabisa ya serikali.
Uhuru's legacy will be left for Kenya's posterity. So I'm happy, and would be very happy to have a hand in shaping that legacy that Uhuru wants to leave behind.
Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto are arguably the most aggressive political mentees of retired President Daniel Arap Moi. Insiders describing the Kenyatta-Ruto relationship as akin to that of childhood friends. A friendship which pundits say will no doubt be tested, as the two set up their cabinet, which some insiders say could be aligned to the 2022 politics.
I don't think the president would want to entertain anybody who would immediately start talking about succession. I think the most important thing that the president would like is to find a team that can help him shape his legacy.
The president has nothing much to lose. He served his term. This is politics. You might want to tell them that you fight your war, I'll give my goodwill. It won't be a surprise, because it's really, it's like to let the people make a decision.
While 2022 backroom realignments will be inevitable, President Kenyatta will no doubt have to stamp his authority to deliver on his campaign pledges for a legacy. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News in Nairobi.
Many thanks, Murimi Mwangi there. And in studio for more on this conversation is governance expert Javas Bigambo. Many thanks for joining us in News Desk, Javas. So a lot obviously going on in politics, from the cabinet reshuffle to people positioning themselves for succession politics, so to speak. Let's begin there. That report by Murimi Mwangi there, what we're calling Gideon Moi's rising star. What is the strategy for this man?
Well, I don't know about strategy. But of course, the manner in which he was positioned to receive some international dignitaries in preparation to, for President Kenyatta's inauguration has sent speculation around the country and the political world that what is it that could have led to the protocol organizers to have Honorable Gideon Moi receive distinguished leaders, including President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda, etc. And you have to look at it from various perspectives or through various lenses. One, that Gideon Moi is a politician with a critical longing to rise. And the other thing is that I look at him as a leader who has got critical and cultivated ambition. Realize that upon the retirement of the Honorable President Uhuru Kenyatta, the field will be very open for the occupation of any. And there's always cutthroat competition when there is no incumbent running for re-election. When you look at him as a man with a longing to rise, then towards, for example, 2022, you look at the Honorable William Ruto, you look at the Honorable Senator Gideon Moi, and a couple of others who may have still ambitions in place. Honorable, for example, Ekuro Okot has not neutered his ambition to run for office again. It is still speculative as to whether Kalonzo Musyoka will run or whether indeed Honorable Raila Odinga will run. All those will have critical dynamics as to who has got the highest chances to ascend to office after Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, and then the kind of power play and coalitions that will be created. Now, I want to look at the Honorable Moi through these lenses. One, that there were missed opportunities even in the run-up to the 2017 election. One, for example, you realize that KANU supported the re-election of Uhuru Kenyatta.
Right.
But it would have been more strategic, for example, to have Honorable Gideon Moi with his KANU party organize even a delegates conference to deliberate the necessity of endorsing Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta for re-election, looking at issues, for example, of devolution, power, rather economics, foreign policy, etc., and why it was prudent for them to support the re-election of Uhuru Kenyatta. So that appeared a bit unstrategic. When it comes to matters resources, then he's a gentleman with immense resources in terms of finances and political capital. Realize that Honorable Moi will also inherit immense political capital from retired President Daniel Arap Moi, the name there. But there are two things in inheriting the political capital of President Moi. One is the huge party, the name that is there. He needs no introduction. But the other thing is that moving forward towards 2022, Honorable Gideon Moi needs to create a unique rhetorical persona. Today, it's easy to pick out things, for example, that President Kenyatta stands for, Honorable Raila Odinga stands for, William Ruto believes in and drives. Honorable Gideon Moi needs to start standing for a position that can set him uniquely as a person who believes in a particular agenda or drive, or driven by a certain instinctive issues. Any politician must have the primordial instinct and drive, one, to be strategic, to stand up and speak for certain critical issues that sets him or her apart. And that is why, after this election, now that the contest is now fully settled, Honorable Gideon Moi needs to set himself apart to that direction. There is also need to see how they can reorganize and revamp KANU, the party, because there are good issues and also some other millstones, what I may call the millstones around the neck of KANU as a party, which inadvertently will have to be embraced as well by Honorable Gideon Moi. The other thing is, he may need also to recruit a fine team of talented, strategic, and insightful advisors on matters economic, for example, matters security, so that when he speaks on an issue, for example, on matters security, we get to have an informed senator speaking on critical issues of national interest on matters security, foreign policy issues. And then the other thing is that he needs to have a strategic way of communicating his desires, the issues of central interest for the country throughout this period. He needs not wait until 2022 is nigh. Actually, the time, like they always say, to repair your roof is when it's shining. So he needs not wait for the rainfall. The time to start reorganizing KANU as a party and putting his political ambition towards 2022 is this moment.
Is that going to be difficult for him, considering KANU's alliance with the ruling Jubilee Party and the fact that the very deputy president has been very vocal about his ambitions for 2022?
Not necessarily, but he has got a very interesting, terrain ahead of him, which is fairly rough, and that's why the place of strategy comes in. His communication handlers, if at all he has them, is a team that may want to redefine the leader that Gideon Moi is.
Right.
All right? So he needs to put in place a team of fine, refined communication handlers that can have Gideon Moi rebranded. Because KANU needs to be rebranded, Gideon Moi needs to be rebranded. And I'll tell you one thing about, for example, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. You remember that Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta was the chairman of KANU. And then he left KANU for the TNA. He rebranded himself. You could see even from the corporate colors of TNA, his affiliation and dalliance with KANU still. The dove, yet in KANU there was the cockerel, the red colors, etc. One thing Uhuru Kenyatta did was that even though he still remained with the whole bulk of his initial supporters, but he created the impression that he's supported by a young, aggressive generation of youthful people or teams, the Sakajas of the time, etc. And that's why Gideon Moi needs to rebrand and reposition himself on the national scale. When you look with retrospect at the run-up or the 2022 electioneering period, you realize that Honorable Gideon Moi was missing on the national scene. He had some presence in the northern part of the Rift Valley, but on the national scene, he was missing, his voice was missing, even KANU's critical positioning and voicing was missing on important or vital national issues. That is why it is very important for Honorable Moi this moment to rebrand himself, to make his ideologies on the map, and then have his instinctive drive as a politician shine again. Because that shine, the star having risen by way of the prominence of receiving critical international guests during this preparation for the inauguration, should not actually give him the comfort or the solace that actually now he has got the national picture and a possible embrace from the people. Remember that Honorable William Ruto is a very aggressive leader. He's a very aggressive politician. He is a man who does not take any prisoners. And for Honorable Gideon Moi then, does not necessarily have to match up to Honorable Ruto because they are very different in terms of personalities, etc. But he needs to see how he starts reaching out as a person, and then also through the structures of his leadership, and then also trying to reach out to other leaders who may not have risen up or reached the helm of their ambition through this election. For example, it would be very important for him to start being very calculative and mysterious. For example, imagine this, that tomorrow morning we get to hear Honorable Gideon Moi was having breakfast with Raila Odinga, and it's not known what they were discussing. Then 2 days later, you have Honorable Gideon Moi having a discussion with the Kuro Court over whatever is not even known. Then you get to have Honorable Gideon Moi having a discussion even with Uhuru Kenyatta's status and then having a photo session. The issue is having a mysterious persona as well. In a short while, you get to have Gideon Moi having or addressing a very important international forum.
Right.
So that kind of mystery and being unpredictable, especially to the other people who are likely to be his competitors, will be very good, will be a very plus for him. And that's why the place of advisors is very crucial in him reigniting his political ambition for 2022 and rebranding and repositioning locally and internationally.
All right, so we'll be following that star, whether it will continue rising, whether it will remain dormant, but also other people positioning themselves. Our cabinet secretaries now, with a major shake-up expected in cabinet after the swearing in of the president and his deputy. What we do know so far is that there will be a shake-up. About 7 cabinet secretaries are set to face the axe. What criteria is likely to be used in axing these cabinet secretaries? Is it their track record? Is it their political savviness, so to speak?
Not necessarily about savviness, because when you look at how President Kenyatta set the tempo after the 2013 election, he said that he's going to have non-politicians in his cabinet, even though he took up some politicians into his cabinet.
And asked them not to engage in politics.
Not to engage in politics. However, something different happened in the run-up to the electioneering period of 2017. Some politicians were very outspoken and outrightly campaigned for his re-election. But there are some also politicians, the other cabinet secretaries, who have not impressively performed during the 5-year term.
Right.
And then there are those who have actually had a sterling performance. Then there are those who have had an average performance. When you look critically at President Kenyatta's inaugural address that was delivered on Tuesday last, then you see that there is the question of legacy hanging on his mind.
Right.
And as he reconstitutes his cabinet, and then also reconstituting the principal secretaries who help to run ministries, he will be driven, one, by the desire to have individuals who can help him achieve his vision, leave a mark, individuals who possibly could be incorruptible, so that he does not leave office with a dark cloud hanging on his mental sky as to whether he was a distinguished leader, having served 2 terms as president of Kenya. The other thing is this. He made critical promises during the campaign period to various politicians, to various regions, that if he is re-elected, he is going to embrace them and include them in his administration. Then you find now a gentleman who is in office, having been re-elected, having made lots and lots of promises, and then also being keen to impress and satisfy and meet all the pledges and promises that he made on the campaign trail.
Right.
That is why he is in a sort of catch-22 situation. Will he want to rehabilitate the ambitions of certain politicians who are rejected by certain voters? Will he want to pick technocrats who can deliver his vision and the Jubilee Manifesto's drive and ambition and, to implement, so that the moment it's implemented, his legacy gets to be cemented, and also tying that to the Kenya's Vision 2030? Those are questions that he needs to ask himself. But then there is the terrible balancing act that he has to do. There is Deputy President William Ruto. He is a man who is very keen to succeed President Kenyatta as president in 2022. And because of that, Deputy President William Ruto will want to propose an inclusion of certain individuals in the cabinet and even as principal secretaries who will be very instrumental toward his campaign and his political machinery for 2022. So President Kenyatta has got to balance that, the ambition of Deputy President William Ruto, and also making sure that he gets to fulfill his promises and pledges and have his legacy permanently cemented in the history of Kenya.
All right, so before we continue,